Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning and happy Veterans Day. It's 8:06. Thanks for tuning in to News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. We still have a great show today. At 8:35, we're going to talk to General Jack Keane on a pretty serious topic, the Iranian plot to assassinate President Trump. You are listening to O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry alongside Hans von Spakovsky. Hello, Hans.
Hi, Julie. We're in our last hour. I can't believe it. Time goes really fast when you're actually in the studio.
It does. It's fun. And joining us now is Matthew Hurtt. He's the chairman of the Arlington GOP. Hey, Matthew.
Julie, how are you? It's great to be with you this morning.
It is great to be with you, and we do want to talk to you about a whole bunch of stuff, but I really want to remind listeners of just how calm you are in the face of unhinged Democrats. Let's play Cut 22.
You try to overthrow elections with violence, and then you're out here among decent people.
Thanks for
coming out.
out.
What do you have to say that, huh? What's on what are your policy prescriptions?
Have a nice day. You
rapist rights?
Yeah.
Involving yourself in people's families and
all right,
bedrooms?
We get the point. Matthew, that was you last year outside a polling place when a Democrat came over to you and started telling you off. The funniest part was he then walked away to his Prius. But you were nothing but Go ahead.
Well, what is so exciting about being a conservative and a Republican in Arlington is the opportunity to take our message to triggered leftists on Election Day and across the community. I went back to that polling location last week, and he was not there. I was so disappointed. But Arlington Republicans had a lot of success last week, and we're building on that in 2025 when we've got House of Delegates races and down-ballot races, all the way through the next off year election in 2027, where I really think conservatives and Republicans have an opportunity to win an election in Arlington.
You know, Matt, I actually noticed something interesting. You know, I drive through Arlington on my way into D.C. to go to work, and there are certain places where they're like greenways, you know, in the middle of the street where I've always only seen Democratic signs, and this year, really, for the first time, I saw all these Trump signs in those greenways, too, and I'd never seen that before.
Well, Hans, I appreciate it, and what Governor Youngkin did in 2021 was make it okay for Republicans to put a yard sign in their yard, and then that just exploded in 2024. We had hundreds of signs. Obviously, you guys know the leftists stole our signs. They destroyed our signs. We got video and photo, and really, in the last 45 days of the election, the Arlington GOP on X, 2 million people saw our content because we exposed the leftists who were upset that they had Republican and conservative and Trump voting neighbors.
You know, I sort of battled with a lot of people in Alexandria who were making J.D. Vance and his family feel very unwelcome, and in fact were doxing his house. And it was very, very disappointing. Of course, this is in Alexandria where every other person has a kindness sign in their yard. Have you talked to any people on the left? How are they coping? I see in Arlington Now article after Trump election, Arlington officials predict a grim future. So they're being pretty negative about this. But what is the reaction you've seen on the street?
Well, our county board leader, Takis Karantonis, is pearl clutching in the local news. On the streets, I've seen a similar vibe. You know, I was walking back from work to my apartment last week, and I'm wearing my identifiable red MAGA hat, and a woman next to me says, "You look like a moron."
I saw that video. Yeah.
And this is, but it takes someone like a lot of my members are older and a little more meek and shy. And so it takes somebody who leads this committee who is bold and unafraid to go out and do these sort of gimmicks and things to raise awareness. And I'll do it, and I'm fine doing it, and I love doing it because every time we do, when we trigger a leftist, we find a conservative or a Republican or a Trump supporter who wants to get involved in the committee. And this year, more so than any other year in the last 15 years I've been involved in Arlington, I have never seen so much excitement and enthusiasm for our committee, for our candidates, and I'm going to build on that opportunity into the future.
Matthew, you are an absolute gift to Northern Virginia. Let me tell you that. And inspired by you, my son and I and a couple other friends walked in Old Town Alexandria the day after the election with a Trump flag. We walked around Old Town Alexandria with a Trump flag just to see, and we got a lot of positive reactions. We got a couple bad ones too, but we got a lot of really positive reactions. We were shocked.
It's so exciting, Julie, because what ends up happening is you embolden people to express their views,
Yes.
and then you're able to say, hey, why don't you get involved in our efforts? Why don't you come out and run for office? That's my big, my big project now. Is we've got 3 House of Delegates races in Arlington next year. We've got a county board race. We've got a school board race. And if you're listening to this program and you think what's going on in our schools is kind of crazy, what's going on at the county level is kind of crazy, what's going on in Richmond is kind of crazy, I want you to run for office. And The committee, last year we sort of perfected this process where the committee helps our candidates run for office. We know it's hard to raise money and to get out there, and the Arlington GOP and our wonderful members have kicked in and supported our candidates every step of the way. We mailed 25,000 sample ballots to anybody who had ever thought about voting Republican in Arlington this year, and we're going to keep doing it year after year until we get some Republicans across the finish line.
Yeah, what's interesting, Julie, about the reaction you got in Alexandria, of all places, is – but that's this, we saw that pattern repeated all over the country, where even in places like California, Donald Trump turned certain counties that have been solidly blue. He turned them red. He
Beverly Hills.
them. Yeah.
Beverly Hills.
Yeah, that happened in a lot of different places,
and a lot of that is due to people like Matthew. I mean, he
Yes.
really works hard. He is really working at the grassroots level. So, Matthew, thank you so much for that. Can you tell us about this gathering that you have? You're planning to welcome Trump back to the White House. Tell us about that, and when is it?
So Wednesday morning, and in Lafayette Park, right across from the White House, Donald Trump is scheduled to meet with Joe Biden at 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'm telling my friends, come out at 10 a.m., bring your protest sign, say welcome home, or thank you, Mr. President, or whatever you want to put on your sign. And let's welcome Donald Trump as he meets with Joe Biden. I did this in 2016. In the same place when Donald Trump won the first time around, and there was so much positive response and reaction. So I'm excited. It is this Wednesday. Again, Trump meets with Joe Biden at 11 a.m., and I'm going to get out there at about 10 a.m. and just welcome him back to the White House.
Matthew Hurtt, chairman of the Arlington GOP. You are a rock star, Matthew. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Love what you guys do.
Thanks, Matthew. We continue in just a moment.
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So we're going to cover some of this more election loss reaction. It's pretty beautiful to watch, Hans.
It is. That's the
breakdown.
Secondary effect of the election. And listen, a lot of people I know have gotten just as much pleasure out of that as seeing Trump win.
Yes. It's so funny. Everyone's like, be nice, be magnanimous. No, nope, not going to do it. Just for a week, okay? Just give me this week. Let's listen to Cut 23, Jen Psaki.
There were many headwinds here. There is sexism. There's racism. All of that is true. But I also think there is a real question I hope people start looking at about who people are listening to. In my view, there was an over-listening to and an over-lifting up of people who left Trump, not people who left the Democratic Party. The people who left the Democratic Party are the people who are going to win in the future. The people who left Trump, the never-Trumpers who have important voices and that is not the winning coalition. And I think that is a takeaway.
Hans, I want to get your opinion on that. That is really interesting because, we do have this sort of group of Never Trumpers. We're talking Project Lincoln. We're talking Bill Kristol. A number of these Never Trumpers who sort of proudly said, "I'm writing in." Paul Ryan, for instance, was a write-in, and other people were saying, "Well, I would never vote for him." There were sort of two factions. There were the Never Trumpers who wrote in someone, and then there were the Never Trumpers who voted for Kamala and, like Liz Cheney, endorsed her, campaigned for her. And it's kind of interesting now to see that the Democrats are like, we don't want to associate with them anymore.
Yeah, but can we start with Jen Psaki basically insulting 75 million Americans, saying, well, the reason they voted for Trump is because they're sexist and racist. She still just doesn't get it at all. And look, all these people who were Republicans who voted for Kamala Harris, despite all of her horrible stances on issues, what they're telling me is that they're unprincipled. They didn't believe in the principles that they supposedly believed in when they were running and getting elected as Republicans.
Well, what frustrates me, too, is that, look, especially for people who, in some ways, I'm more frustrated with people who, wrote in, Donald Duck or Paul Ryan or whatever, because we know we know what happened under Trump. Exactly. And we know what happened under Biden-Harris, and we know what would have happened under Harris. And the idea that, look, hold your nose and vote for Trump because it is going to be a better future for America is so frustrating for me, but it doesn't look like the left has much love loss. Democrats say that Kamala Harris ignored their dire warnings on Liz Cheney. People don't want to be in a coalition with the devil. One Democratic insider said the Harris campaign ran hard with Cheney in the last days of the campaign, appearing with her at rallies and on television appearances. Hans, do you think that made any difference? Yeah.
The idea that her running with Liz Cheney, having Liz Cheney support her, somehow caused her to lose, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, they're looking for it. Yeah.
That is just absurd. Again, they don't want to pay any attention to the substantive issues that have driven people away from the Democratic Party. And, for example, all these working folks, blue-collar people who have basically switched.
Yeah. This is the New Republic that wrote that about Liz Cheney. If the New Republic really wanted to analyze what happened and maybe pin it on one person, maybe look at AOC, who has dragged the Democrat Party to the hard left.
That's right.
And also maybe look at Randy Weingarten, who has treated parents horribly. And led to a gubernatorial candidate saying we don't want them in, making any decisions about curriculum. Those are the kinds of things. Talk about COVID and how old people died alone in hospitals. These are the things. But of course, the New Republic and Axios and many other publications are going to look for anything. They're going to vote. They're going to blame Never Trumpers. They're going to vote Liz Cheney. And again, they're going to continue on this path of not really getting what the real issue is. Well, and that's kind of nice.
That's good because that means they're going to help Democrats keep losing elections.
That's right. We've got much more to get to right now. It is 8:20 on WMAL. So there's still counting going on. You mentioned about the Electoral College.
Yeah, but every state's now been called.
Yeah.
So the final count is in, and Kamala Harris came nowhere even close to winning the election. 312 to 226.
I think we can officially call that a landslide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the more delicious news, after organizing a coup, George Clooney is stepping away from politics, which is pretty funny. I mean, I hope he keeps, they always say that, right? And then they always say they're leaving the country.
Right, and then they always stay. They always disappoint us and stay.
They do. And then this is really interesting. I saw this weekend. Precinct election data shows that Trump won key Los Angeles Jewish neighborhoods, including Beverly Hills.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I look again. I'm glad to see it. I'm not surprised given the wholehearted support. I mean, contrast Harris with Trump in their support of Israel.
Yes.
It's like a 180-degree difference between the two.
Yep. It really is amazing also looking at these maps of California in 22, it was just a little bit of red. I'm sorry, in 2020, just a little bit of red. In 2024, significant portion. I would say, more than half of the state is red. So really some interesting inroads. The question is, will Republicans be able to keep that coalition, keep those voters? And I hope they are. But, it's really remarkable what Trump did in this election and getting many of those
he was
votes.
speaking directly to issues that Americans are concerned about, and the incoming folks in Congress, the Republicans in Congress and the Senate and the House, they need to keep that as their number one priority.
Yep.
Also dealing with those same issues, the economy, the border, and boys and women's sports. I think that was a third big issue.
I totally agree. Listen, we've got more. Stay tuned. Next hour, we're going to talk to Jack Keane about this, General Jack Keane, about this horrible another attempt of the Iranian government. So we'll stay tuned for that. It is 8:29.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, Washington. It's 8:37 on this Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry O'Connor alongside Hans von Spakovsky. I love saying that. It's the last half hour. I don't want to stop saying it. I might be saying that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Let's say you got special brownie points. You got it right.
Thank you. Joining us now is retired 4-star General Jack Keane. An honor to talk to you, General. Thank you for joining us today, and happy Veterans Day.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate being here.
General Keane, we want to talk to you about this reported Iranian plot to assassinate the president, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the election and some of the global actions we've already seen since Trump was reelected. For instance, Qatar demanding Hamas leadership leave the country. We've got the EU president saying they plan to start buying oil from America. It looks like Trump is already restoring deterrence among these global threats. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. The election is going to have a seminal effect on our adversaries in the world. I mean, the reality is that our four adversaries over the last 4 years, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, are cooperating, collaborating, and coordinating together on a scale that exceeded the expectations of our intelligence agencies, which have provided that public testimony to the Congress. And as such, it's not isolated that Russia invaded Ukraine because they thought they'd get away with it, that the Iranians would operationalize their proxies to finally try to destroy the state of Israel and drive the United States out of the region. President Xi increased the tempo of his intimidation and coercion campaign against our allies in the region, to include Taiwan. All of that has been happening, and I was on a congressional commission and looked at all of this, and we believe that we were in a pre-war era heading towards the potential of global war. And the reason is because they believe that the United States American leadership is weak and that we would not politically confront them, that we lack the political will to do that. And now, as a result of this election, every one of those four countries and those leaders have to reassess what is happening in America, what is President-elect Trump going to do when he becomes president, what actions are he's going to take. And they are going through that thought press now. I mean, they clearly want to take advantage of what they see as the United States in decline. I disagree with that. But nonetheless, that's their perception. So they can advantage themselves and reduce the United States' influence and like-minded democracies in the world. So already, without Trump actually taking office, we're beginning to see some of that reassessment. And you just mentioned it. And some other, we're not going to see it, but we'll eventually see it in actions. And I believe when President Trump does take office, he is going to return our political will to confront our adversaries, not with just rhetoric, but demonstrating to them a willingness to stop this aggression that's taken advantage of U.S. national interest.
Well, General Keane, on that, what you just talked about, the perception of weakness, a foreign government targeting one of our former president's candidate for president in an assassination plot, that is an act of war by anyone's definition. And yet, other than the arrest of some of the people involved, we've seen absolutely no other action taken by this administration. My question to you is, what kind of other actions do you think the government should have taken, whether it's military strikes or other things? What would you have recommended to President Biden if you'd been asked about it?
Yes, I would have recommended that we take a military strike against them for attempting to kill the president of the United States. How we can let that stand and just use rhetoric and condemn them is an absurdity. But look at the pattern of behavior, Hans. I mean, they have attacked U.S. bases in the region since January of 21 over 300 times. They are firing ballistic missiles at Navy warships who are attempting to protect the seagoing lanes in the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, and they have de facto shut down the Suez Canal now for months. The CENTCOM commander, Hans, General Eric Kurula, has recommended to this administration over 120 targets inside of Iran to stop this aggressive behavior of theirs in the region against U.S. interests. None of those targets are economic targets, and none of them are nuclear. They're all military IRGC-type targets. None of them would give Iran the impression that we want to go to war with them. All we want to do is stop their aggressive behavior. And all of that has been rejected. So it's not surprising that even now, when they're trying to kill the president of the United States, and it's a bona fide campaign to do that, confirmed by the FBI and CIA, that no action is taken. I mean, it's shameful that we tolerate that kind of thing.
Yeah, and dangerous, because when you don't retaliate, when you don't go back, you're just inviting even worse behavior by the other side. And it seems like the current administration just doesn't understand that.
They never have. They've always put appeasement and diplomacy first. They've never backed it up with a credible military use of force. And you talk to any leader who's led the State Department, and I've talked to many of them, and I know that Blinken at times is very frustrated myself from actual contact with senior people in the State Department, that we're not backing up diplomacy with the credible threat of force. And it gives then the diplomats a much stronger hand to play. In this case, it's not a diplomatic action we take. It's kinetic action to make sure that they're going to stop this kind of behavior.
General Keane, it's always such an honor to talk to you, especially on Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to you. You have had an incredible military career, and we are so grateful for your service.
Oh, thank you, Julia. Thank you, Hans, and happy Veterans Day to everyone out there who served in wars and also helped to prevent wars. We're indebted to all of them. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. We've got more coming up. It's 8:44. This is a pretty awful story, Hans. FEMA officials ordered relief workers in Florida not to help houses with Trump signs. That is a violation of their civil rights, isn't it?
I think potentially so, and it's just downright mean. Isn't it?
It is.
Just these people are in terrible shape. They've had houses destroyed, out of power, all kinds of problems, and they're being targeted because they supported. Now we know the winning candidate who's now the president.
Yeah. But FEMA has been, and a lot of federal agencies have sort of been. You talk about mission creep, right? They are more concerned. Kamala Harris in 2002. Let's listen to this cut 6.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions. We have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity.
What does that mean? I mean, equity, so we base it on on your skin color. It is so revolting to hear that kind of language in America.
It is, but this is something that the left has now been pushing for years in everything.
That's right.
Getting jobs, getting contracts, college admission.
Yes.
They believe, but basically they aren't any different than some of the worst folks from the 1920s and 30s who said, your skin color, that should determine what kind of benefits you get and don't get. And the only thing that's changed is who's benefiting.
Yeah, well, the thing is that Americans, just like the sort of deep fakes about Biden and his age, we got that from FEMA. The FEMA administrator Deanne Criswell, she said it was misinformation when people were reporting that they were not getting the services they needed, and people suspected some of this equity stuff.
Right.
Let's listen to Cut 7.
We have over 4,500 people on the ground that have been here since before the storm made landfall, working side by side with our state counterparts in the communities with our local officials. And all I hear on the ground is gratefulness and compassion and a level of unity to make sure that we're getting people what they need. It's frankly disappointing that we're having to deal with this narrative. And the fact that there's a few leaders that are having a hard time telling the difference between fact and fiction is creating an impedance to our ability to actually get people the help they need.
It is so gross because now we know that this in fact did happen.
Right.
This was a sort of a team leader on the ground in Florida who said, do not give aid to those homes that have Trump signs in their yards. And Florida Governor DeSantis isn't having any of this. He slammed the blatant weaponization of the agency. He said the FEMA spokesman said the agency is deeply disturbed after the incident, noting the official who gave the instruction was given no direction to tell teams to avoid these homes. In fact, that woman actually said that she was just following orders and was being told that from above. So it's going to be really interesting to see an investigation coming out of this and see if this was, in fact, a direct order from the FEMA administrator or somebody high up.
Right. And listen, anytime you have a government official saying, oh, that's misinformation, that's when you should start getting suspicious about the official who's saying that and the supposed misinformation. The left likes to label any opinion they don't like as misinformation.
That's right. And that seems to be pretty common now about everything. It is 8:52. That was fun, Hans. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. And can we give one piece of advice to President Trump? He should try calling General Jack Keane, see if he can convince him to come out of retirement, because I think he'd be the right guy to help him with military affairs.
No argument here. Hello, Chris.
Secretary of Defense, you think?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a fun idea. He's a no-nonsense guy. Nice. And he's a New York guy, too, like President Trump, so they can talk. They can communicate. Unlike Katie Porter, although, do you guys talk about Katie Porter today?
We did. We left it to you.
Congresswoman Katie Porter comes back with more wackadoodle-doo. These people really, they've convinced me of one thing. There is a mental health crisis in the United States of America. And it's not just Trump derangement syndrome anymore. It's the entire Democrat Party. They've got a lot of mental issues. They're not all gender-related, but a lot of them are. And Katie Porter's back with more. The earth is on fire, and we're all going to die soon. And